Welcome everyone. Today with my colleague Kelly, we are happy to have with us Mr. Gilles Kittel from DG REGIO D1 Unit. Thank you very much, Gilles, for joining us and for accepting our invitation to share some information related to ISO 2, a safer and more secure Europe, which I think this information would be really important to programs since they are in the programming phase. So what should they consider related to ISO 2, what's the rationale, and how to program, and what priorities to set up. Thank you once again.
So hello, thank you, Bessiana, thank you, Kelly. I'm very glad to be with you today. I hope that you are all safe, you and your families. It's clearly a strange time, I would say. So that's why also I think ISO 2 is so important. ISO 2 is, as it was said, a safer and more secure Europe. It's a new objective. Maybe we can, sorry, the next one. So I will start with the context. So it's a statement from our president, made very recently, so on the 27th of May, and you can see that really we position the Commission as a much more geostrategic Commission, this one, and obviously ISO 2 is an important aspect in that context. So, and that's very important, Ms. van der Leyen mentioned, in cooperation with its partners. So clearly, ISO 2 is not to make Europe a fortress, but really to establish partnership with the partner countries to secure both sides. And that's really the spirit you will see of the proposal that we are making. Next, please. Another, I would say, another piece of context that I would like to present to you. This is more for the Western Balkans, but that's another important event which happened quite recently. So in Zagreb on the 6th of May, where the European leaders and the leaders of the Western Balkans jointly made a declaration. I took an extract of it just to underline that this security and safety dimension of our cooperation is more and more important. So if I read what is underlined, they say that they agree to advance their cooperation on core security issues with more determination and in more systematic way, including at operational level. So that's really what we are talking about today. Next slide, please. Another example, just to tell you that's not only about the Western Balkans. So here it's about the Eastern Partnership. So that is also a bit, it was made a bit, actually they met a few days ago to confirm those 5 new long-term strategic priorities. And you can see that it is highlighted on the slide. Constantly, we are talking about resilience, about security. Also, and that's very important, it should be fair and inclusive. But clearly, this aspect of safety and security is everywhere in the new strategies that we want to develop with our partner countries. Next slide, please. So in that context, DG REGIO has proposed this ISO 2, a safer and more secure Europe. This objective is obviously linked to, I don't know, I assume some of you already attended to the other session on ISO 1 on other important changes that we are making with the new proposal. So this embedding dimension, which is new, but which is very important, which will give another significance to the territorial cooperation. Also about external borders and outmost regions, we have to consider obviously EPA 3 and NDK policy frameworks. So those are aspects which are considered in the proposal, and there are obviously a lot of complementarities in our proposals. And that should not be forgotten. There we are talking also here about transnational programs and macro-regional strategies. And in that context, we know that some strategies have already recently modify the action plan, but for some others, the modification will only happen next year or the year after. In that context, for sure, this ISO 2 should be considered. Next slide, please. So the presentation is divided in 5 parts. So short some words more about the situation we are facing right now, and a few words about the programmation, the rationale of the objective, and then, because that's very important, you will see the fact that the approach should be integrated and coordinated, especially for this specific objective, differently from PO5, because that's also an integrated strategy. But here you will see there are a lot of actors, stakeholders, and therefore it's very important that there is a proper coordination. And finally, on the basis of all those elements, we will make some proposals for your future priorities under ISO 2. Next slide. So next, so before we begin, so just a few words. So some warning, just to say, and that was mentioned again by my colleagues when they made the presentation on ISO 1. As you certainly know, the presentation is made essentially on information which was produced before the pandemic, meaning that there are certainly changes which will still happen. Therefore, here the presentation is made on common understanding, on the intention, but obviously the mechanics are not fully stable. So at this stage, it's important that you rather watch this presentation and compare it or benchmark it with your needs and see if this presentation can help you, can guide you in your future choices, programming choices. But certainly there will be some changes, so this presentation will have to be updated in the coming weeks and months. But again, we think that the dynamic should remain the same, and the mechanics is nonetheless more or less known, and that's for us the most important. So next slide, please. So next one, just matter. Okay, so about the regulation, which is still under negotiation, there are 2 important articles for ISO 2, the Article 14, paragraph 5, and the Article 15, paragraph 2. So ISO 2, like ISO 1, is considered as a policy objective in addition to the 6 others, so the PO1 to PO5 plus ISO 1. Next slide, please. So on that basis, we have defined so far 4 indicative but I would say exhaustive specific objectives, which are border management infrastructure, mobility and migration management, protection and integration of migrants, and then other actions to give you the possibility to be creative and not supposed to be too prescriptive. So next slide. But that will have to be developed. I have to say this is still very much in progress. About the budget, now you see that there are 3 proposals on the table, which are different. And that's why also it's still quite uncertain what will come up from this specific objective. So the percentages are not the same, and also the combination with ISO 1 is not presented the same manner by the 3 actors. At this stage, I would say you see that only the Commission say shall, while the 2 others, the Parliament and the Council, say may. So it's only optional for the 2 others. I think at this stage, that's not the most important. The most important will be in the following slide to see how our proposal can fit with your reality. Okay, next slide. So you know, I think very much, so we are facing global challenges about globalization, climate change, technology transformation. I would say even the COVID-19, this is certainly a global we are all facing. Political developments like the refugee crisis, and then fast increasing threats. And I mentioned already COVID-19, but you have also cybercrime, terrorism, disasters, and so on. So it is certainly not an easy context, and that's why we are convinced that ISO 2 can address them, but we will see that. Next slide, please. So the point for us is to say that all those challenges, they have an impact, and a significant one, on the economic, social, and territorial cohesion in Europe. So they are linked to the other policy objectives. They cannot, ISO 2 cannot be treated separately from the others. ISO 2, in a way, can be seen as an enhancing condition for the other policy objective. And that's why we consider that ISO 2 is something important which needs to be addressed either through your program or through other means, but which needs these frameworks need to be properly established, secure, safe, in order to create the necessary conditions for the prosperity and the good implementation of the other policy objectives. That's really the way we see ISO 2. Next slide. So, as I say, we have for this specific objective the need for a very strong coordination mechanism. And when we say so, we are talking both about integrated use of EU funds. So it's really about combining funds from different line DGs from in the Commission, or even from different donors, and coordination mechanisms between the funding authorities. When we are talking about coordination mechanisms, we see it at 3 levels. So you can coordinate at programming level, also implementation one, or at the level of the project. All those coordination are possible, but it's very important that you think ahead about those coordination. They need to be organized. They are not intuitive, and therefore there is a lot of preparatory work to be done. That's very important. That's why it is important that already now you think about the coordination mechanism that you want to create in case you want to implement ISO 2. And we are obviously ready to help you in that context. Next slide. So why we say that you need a coordination? So we saw before already that you need, let's say, budgetary coordination and also programming coordination, but you need also, in policy-wise, a coherence between different policy sectors. So again, security and safety cannot be disconnected from territorial cooperation, development, trade, employment, foreign and home affairs policies. All those policies, in reality, are interrelated. So we are really advocating for an holistic approach when you are dealing with ISO 2. Also, when we are talking about ISO 2, you need to link it, but also demark it from the other cohesion policy objectives. Clearly, there are aspects which can be covered by the 5 first policy objectives, and therefore it's very important that you think ahead about what you want to finance through the 5 first policy objectives, what you would reserve for ISO 2. That's also true for the other EU policies and instruments. So we are thinking, because that's the most important ones budget-wise, about the Asylum and Migration Fund, the Integrated Border Management Fund, the Union Civil Protection Mechanism, all those things need, and that's very important for us, need to be considered when you program ISO 2. So it's really the idea that we are playing on complementarities with ISO 2. And considering the amount that we have, for sure, we cannot act in standalone, on a standalone basis. That's for sure. Next slide, please. So if we start with the, more specifically, with the thematic policy objectives under the cohesion policy, there are 2 areas where we see that normally they should be covered by the policy, let's say the traditional policy objectives, and not by ISO 2. The first one is the investment in disaster risk management planning and mutualization of equipment. Normally that is covered under PO2. So here, clearly, but again, we can discuss, normally that should not be financed through ISO 2. The other area where we don't see normally any reason to use ISO 2 is the investment in housing, short-term and long-term investment for people with a migrant background. There, it should be normally financed through PO4. So again, is to say, really, we have to avoid overlapping. We don't consider those overlapping as positive. Sometimes they can be, but here the idea is really that we rather complement each other. And if it can be covered by the 5 first policy objectives, then our suggestion would be not to use ISO 2. Next slide. So the next slide is to show you also, and here we have actually structured the ISO 2 in light of the priorities of DG Home, because obviously DG Home is probably the main actor on our side on this policy. To show you that there are many stakeholders on our side. I'm not speaking even about the other donors, but if we limit ourselves just on the Commission side, if I start with the asylum and migration issue, you see that you have first, obviously, the Asylum and Migration Fund from DG Home, but you have as well Frontex that you have probably heard about, the EU Emergency Support Instrument, the European Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid Operation, the Right and Value Program, ERDF Mainstream, so our colleagues from the Mainstream Program, Erasmus+, SF+. So it's to say here, we have made the exercise, but I will not guarantee you that it is absolutely accurate and complete, but it gives normally a rather good overview nonetheless. It's just for you to see that if we map the different funds, we see that we cover already a wide range of issues. And it's very important that you understand what the other funds are doing in order not to duplicate what is or can be financed through the other funds. So you see that already here, the margin left for us for ISO 2 is not enormous. And that's a bit the purpose of the slide, to show you which aspects are already covered by others and therefore normally do not need to be covered by you through ISO 2. Next slide, please. So the same exercise with the border management and visa topic. So again, the main fund is the border management and visa instrument of DG Home. And then you have additional instruments, let's say actors like Frontex, CSDP1, customs programs, or Horizon in Europe. Again, the mainstream ERDF programs. So again, the point is just for you to read this slide and to see what is normally covered by other funds, and therefore should not be repeated by you through ISO 2. So it's in a way for you to establish negative priorities and to concentrate on what is not covered, because you will see afterwards there are nonetheless areas where we think that ISO 2 can really bring some added value, but certainly not to be to repeat what other funds instruments can already can finance. Next slide, please. So the third big, let's say, chapters is the internal security. Here again, the main fund is the Internal Security Fund of DG Home. And then again, you have different actors. So I just enumerate them quickly for you. Europol, that you've probably heard about already. Digital Europe, ESF+, Horizon Europe, ERDF. So again, you see each of them has a role to play. And in our view, the purpose of ISO 2 is certainly not to repeat this, but to complement them in a smart way. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're moving to the proposed priorities under ISO 2. So the first one is probably, I hope, something you have heard about, is the green lane. the green lanes that we have created to ensure the free circulation of goods during this COVID-19 pandemic. So the idea is that we, although it's already done, but also to ensure this is guaranteed and maintained, organize the checks on one side of the border in order to avoid queues, wasting time for the trucks, for the boats, to ensure again that there is a free flow of goods in Europe and also at the external borders. Behind, you can see you have the map. So we have established the map of the main axis that was requested to the member states. And then you have points, you can see them. So you have border crossing points, which are considered as corridors, others as core. A third category, which is considered as comprehensive. So it's to say that normally this is already done for your countries, but the idea is that ISO 2 might help to secure, maintain this, because we are, although we cannot be sure, but we cannot exclude that this crisis, this pandemic will last still for a few months or a bit more, and therefore these green lanes are extremely important for our economy in Europe and for the partner countries. Next slide, please. The second priority that we would advise is to support your policies on integrated border management. So it's a concept promoted by DG Home. It's actually to strengthen the security of the EU external borders through surveillance, border checks, and that's very important because it's not only about security, it's also about protect supply chain. So again, here, it is linked to in a certain manner to the COVID-19 crisis. It's also to ensure that we don't also create unnecessary burdens on the borders, but at least we make those security checks smarter, more effective, faster. And in that context, we discussed with DG Home, and they consider that we can have some added value. We can complement what they are financing. Next slide. The other one, which is linked, is actually the upscaling, the replication of the cross-border points infrastructure. The picture that you see is actually a project which was financed under NEI CBC program. We finance many projects like this one, especially on the border between Finland and Russia. So we consider that this is very clearly an area where you can invest, where there is a need, where this would really positively, let's say, contribute to the economy of the countries involved. And this is very complementary of the other priorities that we have just shown, so the green lanes and also the equipment that this integrated border management. Next slide, please. The next one is actually another, let's say, chapter. It's also to, we think that ISO 2 can help to integrate people with a migrant background, certainly. And there, we would say, because you know that normally those infrastructures are financed through the mainstream program. So the burn point here is certainly not to finance through cross-border or transnational programs, infrastructure that normally we finance through mainstream, but we think that nonetheless there might be some potential in the cross-border areas, and there might be some specificities which might be financed through ISO 2. But again, you understand this would be certainly quite marginal compared to what the mainstream programs are supposed to finance under this issue, let's say, because this is really more for the mainstream program. And obviously, this has also to be done in good coordination with the funds deployed by DG Employment, because DG Employment is also extremely active on this topic. Next slide, please. So the next, this is the third, let's say, chapter. It's about the management of disaster risk. We say normally that those risks should be covered through PO2. That's actually the way things have been designed, let's say. We think nonetheless there is a small space for ISO 2 for biological threats, but again that should be then in complementarity with other EU instruments, because we have already a lot of actors on the topic, and therefore that can be done only in complement of other actions that we are financing through other funds. So you see, it is certainly small, but you can finance through this in terms of risk management for CBC. I'm insisting. Next slide, please. Here we are talking about the protection of all public of the public spaces areas. Again, this is normally essentially covered by the mainstream programs. So that's not for CBC programs to finance, so to make cities resilient. This is it's not for ISO 2, let us be clear. At least that's the next slide, please. Then the protection of the critical infrastructure, so especially now the IT infrastructures, again, this is essentially for mainstream programs. We see an exception with infrastructure located in cross-border areas, but that would be very limited. Normally, that should be financed through mainstream programs. Next slide. Okay, so now you see is to say that we perceive, at least we consider, that the transnational programs and the macro-regional strategy is a way to combine our strengths to do things better. So that's the purpose of this picture. So to tell you that that's really the way we want to see the macro-regional strategies to function. We know that clearly they need still to be, let's say, they have not yet reached the cruise speed, let us put it like that. But we are convinced that on the long run, they can really bring some added value. And therefore, we have also some proposal for the macro-regional strategy in the transnational with regard to ISO 2. Next slide. So the point, the reasoning is the following, is to say that all the challenges that I already mentioned to you, they are of transnational nature. And therefore, it seems logical that we try to address them through transnational programs, through macro-regional strategies. This is, in a way, the natural level to tackle those issues. So it would be logical, although I cannot say that that's been done so far on a wide scale, but that would be logical, and that is something that we are exploring, because I have to say we are working on that. But we would like to propose to the transnational programs and macro-regional strategies to consider more the ISO 2 in the future. Next slide, please. So the priorities that we have identified for the CBC programs are the same for the macro-regional strategies and the transnational. Again, I'm well aware that it depends on the action plan. Some have not the security in their priorities, current priorities, that is very well known. Some others have. But the point is to say that in the context of a future revision, we think that ISO 2 should be considered. So the priorities are, we saw them already: integrated border management, the integration of people with a migrant background, the management of disaster risk, the protection of the public spaces, and the protection of the critical infrastructure. Again, as you might remember for CBC, we consider that for the three last bullets, it is essentially for the mainstream program and not for the CBC program. Here, it's a bit different from transnational and macro-regional strategy. So next slide, I will show you why. Because we think that actually there is an added value with the transnational level that you don't have under the CBC program. Since you have this transnational dimension, you can work at another level. So those are a few proposals that we are making, which are, for instance, about intra-service vertical cooperation between central, regional, and local levels in the cooperation area. We could also imagine transnational cooperation on some topics, always, and that's, I would say, the guiding suggestion in the presentation, always in close coordination with other relevant organizations. So we're thinking, I showed you already many before, Frontex, Europol, Interpol, depends on which sector you are, on which policy you are. But obviously, there are other stakeholders. We are well aware of that. And in synergy as well with other initiatives, because there are also political initiatives. Here I mentioned two, but there are many others, like the European Forum for Urban Security, the Urban Innovative Actions. So again, we have tried to map all those initiatives and organizations, and we think that we have identified some spaces for interesting operations financed by ISO 2 that we can discuss in bilateral exchanges later after this presentation, if you like, or during the session of question and answers, you will tell me at that moment. Through this transnational approach, we think that you can also develop transnational cooperation, as we say, but also transnational approach. So it's really to scale up, actually, an approach which is first defined at national level, then it can be scaled up at transnational level. You can also finance transnational networks of cities, but there are different stakeholders that you can organize in a way through your programs. You might also obviously work through transnational projects. And in that context, and that's the last bullet point, but we would like to insist on that, we think it's also very important to capitalize on previous transnational projects, because in reality, we have already financed many in the past, not only DG REGIO, other DGs like DG Home, and it's important if we can capitalize on them and just move ahead more, or move forward, let's say, the issue. So those are examples, you see, about the way we think that national and macro-regional strategy, maybe more than CBC, can better address the 5 priorities, the 5 dimensions. As we said for the CBC, probably they have to limit themselves on the 2 first, so border management, migration of reception of migrants as well. While for the transnational program, probably there is a wider scope for the use of ISO 2. Next slide. Okay, so we are reaching the conclusion now. So let's go to the conclusion. We see, so it's another quotation from our president, which says that peace, security, and development are all mutually dependent, and they need an integrated and comprehensive approach. And this is exactly what we are lobbying for. So we are saying that if you want to implement the other policy objectives, especially for the external Interreg programs, you need to consider ISO 2. ISO 2 is a way, an enhancing, in a way, objective or priority for the others. Okay, I would like, so next slide maybe. So I would like to thank you. I hope this was useful. Next slide maybe. So it's also to say that clearly, and that remains, you see the spirit of DG REGIO, we consider that EU is built on solidarity. So that's really important to remember. The idea is certainly not to build up walls between the Europe and the rest of the world, certainly not. And this is also, this is really in our DNA. So I want in that respect to reassure you all the proposals that we are making are simply to make your implementation better, smarter, more effective. And that's really the purpose of ISO 2 as well. Next slide, maybe. So to say also, we are using social media, so you're absolutely welcome, you see, to follow us, let's say, and contact us, certainly, so today and in the coming days. Next, maybe, and the last slide. So I would like to thank you, and I wish you a good seminar with us. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, Gilles, for your presentation. It was very clear, I would say, and we would very much appreciate your participation on the 6th of July for our Q&A session. I think programs will for sure have many questions, but I hope also this presentation will help them somehow to clarify their ideas and then, yes, embed this ISO in their program. Thanks again for the time dedicated to us, and see you on the 6th of July. Have a nice day.
You too.